back to the channel. My name is Fancy Ice, and I will be your YouTuber today. Today we'll be talking about the Caernarvon Action X and its development through Squeegee's eyes. So I call Squeegee wargaming. So this tank, to put it all out there, is not real. The Action X was not even supposed to be in development. It was not a tank. So development of the fighting vehicles of the 200 series began in 1950 and consisted of mating a FV-200 to a Centurion Mark III. This was made to interim and fill a role between the first heavy gun FV-2114 Conqueror. So this FV Action X was basically a Tankenstein-esque coupling of 4 different real fighting vehicle tanks parts. And they were not meant to be put together, and there's no official record of these being paired at all. The problem starts while World of Tanks actually does offer an in-game explanation for the tank and for its different armors. It states that it was a part of the FV-2000 line, which would chronologically put it in the 1950s development, which it was not a developed tank, and it was not meant to be. Out of the entire FV series, only 4 of these variants were ever made, which was the Conqueror, your Caernarvons, and 2 armored recovery vehicles, which was the FV-219 and the F-222. So a big reality check was the Conqueror was still in development while this tank was said to be made. The prototypes for the FV-221 consisted of a Conqueror with a Cent 3 turret with a 20-pounder. There was 10 of these prototypes built, and honestly, it makes no sense why wargaming, obviously, they're known for making tanks that aren't real, obviously, since we have the anime tanks, we have the cartoon tanks, we have the Astartes tanks from Warhammer 40k. But in-game, this turret was technically real, but there's no record that can be found of it. We just know that it's a real project. The real name for this turret was the Centurion Mantleless turret, which meant it did not have a gun mantle on the front of the face of the tank like a lot of your British tanks have. Instead, they angled the slope of the turret back, which is why you have that forehead on the tank. And that's what is in the game, is your spot that you can pen very easily on the tank. You see me get here in the replay through it. That's kind of sleep, just a pain. And another reality in this game was this turret could not and was not meant to be mounted on a Conqueror hull like this, or a Caernarvon hull, sorry, simply because they were built years apart. The Mantleless turret was tested in the late 1950s, 1960s on Centurion platforms, and that's kind of an issue, at least for me, because I like history, I like accurate tanks, and that's why I like playing these kinds of games sometimes. Another thing is the gun. The gun is accurate. It's a quick-firing 20-pounder Type B, which IRL could actually pen up to 330 millimeters of armor, and in the game it only does 258. Another issue with the quick-firing 20-pounder Type B gun is it really it's inaccurate in its appearance. You could not have a thermal sleeve on these tanks, on this type of gun, the Type A and the Type B. The only difference between those was the fume extractor. There was one on one and not on the other. But there was no way to put a thermal sleeve on these tanks due to just the fact that there was a temperature inconsistency when firing the gun, so a thermal sleeve wouldn't do anything for it. It wouldn't keep a consistent temperature for the gun. And getting into the third and fourth part of this tank's issues is the engine is absolutely wrong. what it says in the game is that it is a Rolls-Royce Griffin engine, which obviously Britain and America were well known for using airplane engines in their vehicles. And because due to it being more effective, rotary engines just worked. The real engine that was in the Caernarvons was the Rolls-Royce Meteor Mark. What is that? No, it's a Mark II, number 2 engine, and that's what kind of sucks. I wish they would have used the real engine for it. But the one thing they did get right was the suspension. Obviously, I'm not going to try to pronounce that. I'm not going to, but the suspension's the only accurate part about it. Those skirts you see on the turret also were not meant for this vehicle. You also see these skirts on the Super Conqueror, and the Super Conqueror is also a fake tank. There was no name recorded for that vehicle as a Super Conqueror. What these skirts were used for, and what the Super Conqueror static test target to test high explosive squash head, which is HESH, different types of HE ballistics on armor that they would pretend was an enemy. It was basically a test firing dummy, and obviously I'll put pictures up while I'm talking of these kinds of stuff. It's just a really big letdown for me for this tank, historically speaking. Now, in the game, this tank is an absolute powerhouse. In this replay, you'll see I don't really do a lot in this replay, but I do block 3.3k damage, which is amazing. It's just a really trolly armor, just for me, in general. For a review of this tank, I'm going to be honest with you, this tank is a question mark out of 10. Sometimes it can feel like you're walking into a McDonald's and you want to order a McFlurry, and the ice cream machine actually works. And then sometimes you play it, and it feels like you just stepped on a ton of Legos, and your foot is now bleeding and you're impaled. It's up to your playstyle. I don't recommend this tank for a new player, because they're going to want to rip their hair out if they don't understand how to play a hold-down tank. They also have to get used to low-damage, high DPM tanks, which is really only seen on medium tanks and some heavies. Britain's known for their quick-firing guns. Which brings to another point. This tank, its gun is designated as a medium gun. Britain has a very weird way of classifying guns. Their tanks are classified by their gun type. So this would be a medium gun tank, and whereas the Conqueror would be a heavy gun tank. Their designations are literally just based off of their gun types and power. It's just back to what I was talking about for the game. The tank's great. I just don't recommend it for new players. It's a solid tier 8, and you really don't want to be on the opposite end of this tank. It just lays down the hate when you have such a great DPM. It's just, it's honestly great. So we're going to sit back and watch this and have some fun. I was actually randomed into a game with a dude I was talking to on a Discord server at this match. It was just kind of funny. I was messing around with him the whole time. Just kind of sitting here waiting to see if he'd get mad at me. And another thing is, this tank is in store right now. I said it in my other video. I would honestly say it's not. The price is just weird for me. I got this tank out of a mystery box, so I never really paid the full price for it. So I was kind of lucky on that part. And I was originally going to make this video also with the T95 Chieftain, and that was a really interesting tank. The T95 Chieftain, the reason it has that wonky looking turret was because it was a big group effort between America, Britain, and Canada to make a prototype tank. And the T95 series for America, which they were actually built, there were some built, just not the T95 Chieftain. The T95 Chieftain was canceled very early into its development, just because of how unfeasible it was. It was unanimously, just bad. People didn't really want it. It was a shame that it wasn't built because it was kind of beautiful to look at. But the T95 series was an experimental medium tank built by America. And America basically wanted to test some really crazy looking ideas. Like some of the T95s featured silicus armor cord, or cord armor, which is really unique to me in a sense that it's really wonky, dude. Like, there's just so many crazy ideas that America had, and it just shows how advanced we've become from just what we are today. These were testbed vehicles for what our modern tanks are now. And it's just really crazy to see that in action. The Conqueror in itself for Britain was a testbed for the first MBTs that we have. And it's just really interesting to see. I mean, obviously I might review different tanks. I might not just do the United Nations. If you guys are really interested in learning about more tanks and knowing more about different tanks, I mean, obviously you can comment and like the video. It helps out a lot, and I really appreciate all the new viewers and all the new subscribers. It just really helps me out, and I'm really thankful. And I said F you to the Prighetto. I get a little toxic sometimes. I can rage a bit. Decent game. Obviously, these were just filler clips. I didn't really want to try hard for a game that I didn't really want to put a lot of effort into. It's just background clips, background noise while I talk. Sorry, I actually took a break between these recordings. So this is later in the day. This is about 3 hours later. I honestly think in conclusion, this is honestly just another squeegee attempt at using a false tank to really dictate the tier. But from a gameplay standpoint, it's perfectly fine. That's that forehead, the mantless tank I was talking about. But really, you know, if you want to see more content like this, please like and subscribe. Maybe share the video. You know, thank you so much. I'll catch you in the next one.